Hey everybody, it's Gabe. I've tried to make like 10 videos in a row just now, and I think I'm just going to stick with a life update because there's some big topics I want to address in coming videos. And I'm going to need to gather my thoughts and, yeah, really address them in a more thoughtful way. And then just talking at you. So, major life updates. I am 30. I am 2 years into a really lovely relationship. Um, I am 8 years on testosterone and 7 years post-op. So this is what 8 years on testosterone looks like for me. uh, it's funny. It's like definitely a time of starting to conceptualize myself as, this is interesting. It's like there's more changes all the time, more hair, basically. My body shape has started to change a little bit in the last year or so. My metabolism's slowing down. And all of these changes that more shoulder hair, all of these changes I'm actually starting to associate with aging rather than being in transition, because I'm really not anymore. And that's just a very subtle shift that's happened, that's kind of cued into me that I am thinking of myself as post-transition. So that's really interesting. And that's certainly bringing things up with it. But it's definitely like, I would say I've never been more certain that transition was right for me, because the ways in which I'm aging feel good, even when they're hard, like I feel like I look older in my face and I don't have hair anymore and I'm kind of gaining weight in my love handle area, and those things are really challenging for me. And also when I think about, what aging would look like if I had a different hormonal makeup, I feel very assured and very, I know I had a period of time there that I was really questioning testosterone in my life, and that is definitely not still happening. Although I still have funny times because my partner is queer and she hasn't been out for very long. So she's never been in like an openly queer relationship. I mean, we have a queer relationship. I have a complicated relationship with my gender. And sometimes I feel like a butch on tea, and sometimes I feel like a gay man, and sometimes I feel like all sorts of things. So I am gender fabulous, although I'm not that fabulous because I'm not femme, which is a funny thing. Is that how to be fabulous when you actually present mask, and what even is masculinity? Like, why am I not femme? I don't know. I don't know these things. These are big questions. Anyways, so I have a complicated relationship with my gender, and sometimes most of the time, I really want us to be witnessed as a queer couple. And I'm like, oh, I really wish that I looked like a lesbian for you, and that's like just a funny thing, is that it's so funny because that desire feels so different from dysphoria. It feels so different from regretting transition. It feels, like body dysphoria is such an acute pain. It's not like a longing. It's not a societal, well, it is a societal desire. It's a desire for how you're witnessed in society, for sure. I just feel more of like frustration at cissexism and how I don't have the agency in a cissexist society to present myself as I wish I could be witnessed in the world, which is as a trans person, really. And I'm not seen that way. I'm seen as a cis man, and that, is a sort of combined force, the privilege of safety, the privilege of, passing as a powerful gender. Men are given so much power in the world, and you really learn that when you transition one way or the other into gaining it or losing it, So that privilege coming up against the violence and oppression of living in a society that invisibilizes trans bodies and asks that we disappear. I don't want to disappear, but with my secondary sex characteristics, unless I embody a certain kind of androgyny, disappear I will. So always trying to navigate how to take up space in the world as a trans person, be witnessed that way. And we recently had Pride here in Victoria, and we went out to a bunch of gay events, and we basically had to feel like we were each other's best friend wing people because, you know, she was visible as queer to queer women, and I was visible as queer to queer men, and didn't matter if we were dancing together, our relationship was invisible in that. You know, which is good and bad. Like, it's nice to finally have the experience on a regular basis of going to gay bars and being witnessed as a queer man. That's something that gave me so much dysphoria prior to testosterone. I would be so low after going to a gay bar if I wasn't passing. And now I get that, and that's sweet. I like that. However, I also like my partner and wish that we could be witnessed as we are. The only capacities in which we're witnessed as a couple is by like straight people who want to interact with us as a straight couple, and we're both like that's just, you know, it's weird, and it feels like you're performing a role, and that's where I feel like a lot of my dysphoria, this, you know, holding myself to cis male standards of bodies, and that's where all that stuff really gets exacerbated and triggered. So it's interesting that, you know, coming into the privilege of passing all the time as a man in the world, you know, regardless of my identification, like that is a witnessing that I sought out with my dysphoria. I followed my body and did what it wanted me to, and that's, you know, more comfortable than it was before. And I'm happy with that. But ironically now, connecting myself to my transness, the thing that I was so targeted for, the thing that caught, you know, like if you had told me prior to testosterone, oh, you just need to connect with your transness to get over some of your body issues, I would have just screamed, because you're so connected to it, you're living in it, in a way that is so embattled because of how transphobic our society is. And then once you transition into more of that privilege of being red cis, privilege, dubious privilege / violence, of being red cis all the time, I find that when dysphoria comes up, that reminding myself and connecting myself to my trans story, to my struggles pre-transition, to the struggles, like not just on a struggle level, but just as a narrative, as a part of me, as a place that I've learned things and that I do cherish, and as something that really holds the complexity of my gender. You know, my trans embodiment holds the complexity of my gender. That's how I feel soothed in my dysphoria. And I don't know if that's about being non-binary. I don't know if that's a universally accessible thing for trans people who are really binary identified. But I would guess that there is merit, no matter how you identify as a trans person, in healing your relationship with your story. You know, in being in those feelings of grief and loss and mourning for what you've experienced, or for the things that you have lost along the way, or for the aspects of your embodiment that you've lost along the way. There are ways I'd love to present myself that I can't anymore, because it worked for me pre-transition and it just doesn't work for me now, and I miss that. So I don't know. I think that the aspect of leaving those things behind and stopping connecting with them, that's been a place that I've really inhabited for like the last few years of my life, because I've been seeking safety, and trying to build confidence in this world. And now that I've had some success with that, going back and really, you know, recounting and re-experiencing traumas in a safe context, just describing them, sharing them with people, sharing them with and to myself, writing letters that I'm never going to send, and and just like embracing myself from childhood all the way up to the person that I am now, and seeking connections in those people that the person that I was, the people I have been, and the person that I am now. Because I think that a lot of times with transness, we're really asked to sever that. We're really asked to see all of the wrongness in the person that we are before transition in order to access our transitions, in order to access, if we're not medically transitioning, in order to access validation from within our community and without, that the things that we're asking for, like our pronouns or our names, we're asking permission for those things. People are withholding permission to use the proper pronouns and names if we don't sort of fit this trans enough narrative, and that's really scary and really violent. So I think once we reach whatever kind of safety we can find, or at any point in our transitions, the more work that we can do to reconnect those filaments that attach us to the people that we've been in the past, no matter what gender those people identified as or looked like or whatever, that nothing we experienced in terms of those struggles were our fault, and that we have always been the person that we are, even as we've been other people, if that makes sense. That is a profoundly healing thing, and that I find that the biggest place that healing shows up is in my relationship with my body in terms of my dysphoria and my dysmorphia. So in my relationship with punishing myself for putting on weight, in my relationship with telling myself that I'm not attractive enough, or don't live up to a certain beauty standard, or that I don't have the right personality, or that I don't, all of the ways in which we invalidate ourselves, but specifically in our sexualities, but specifically in how those things relate to my body, that's a real place that doing that healing work shows up, and that's interesting for me. I hate my body less when I'm connected to my story more. So I think I'm going to leave it at that, because that's kind of getting into one of those big topics, and I want to talk about that more with you guys, but maybe in its own separate video. All right, I hope everyone's doing well, and I'll check in with you guys soon.